What do you call the quiet after a bad joke? The silence. Hey, shh. Hey, everybody. It's Kane, modern day Kane, editing this, and I just wanted to put this in here because I didn't get to mention it during the recording of this initially. But sorry about the delay. Things ended up taking a little longer than we expected, but we are back now with our regular weekly episodes. Thank you so much for sticking around, and we look forward to having you. Welcome back to Not Another Needless Sequel, where we watch movies and propose unnecessary prequels, sequels, reboots, and remakes. My name is Kane, and I am joined today by Kelsey, who is my wife.
I'm going to need absolute silence to get into character. Absolute silence to get into character. Well, if you guys haven't already guessed it, this week we're going to be...
No, don't step on my joke for your joke that doesn't fit.
My joke did fit. It's good because they're supposed to be quiet.
This week, we thoroughly read subtitles in 2018's A Quiet Place. So what's the story there?
Well, I think you pretty much just said, reading subtitles because they can't talk or they'll get attacked by the monsters. Follows a family, I guess.
That's right. So it starts off with, it says like day 82, and you see a family scavenging a pharmacy, and they're all barefoot. They're all trying not to make noise. They're moving very slowly, except their one son, who I thought was pretty bold to let him run around, because kids bump into shit.
Yeah, I thought the beginning of the movie, it only showed the barefoot kids running around, and I feel like that set the tone that this was like going to be a creepy film. Because just seeing barefoot, raggedy looking children, dirty looking children running around is a little scary. In an abandoned store,
Yeah. Well, so they're in that store, and I did want to say that I saw that there was, like, you can see that things have been picked over, which, I mean, it's only been 82 days, so, I don't know how many people survived the initial attack.
It also looks like they live pretty rural, so they probably had a better chance to figure it out and survive by watching the news before the creatures actually got to them. Like, I feel like, the movie Day One is coming out, or One, or whatever.
Yeah.
The prequel to all of this, and it's set in New York City. So it makes me think that, I feel like every movie, it always attacks New York City first. But also they do live in it looked like a more desolate place.
Yeah, for sure. But in this grocery store, there was still potato chips that nobody had taken because,
the noise.
You wouldn't want to. Which, honestly, just get some scissors. Like, if you just cut, it won't make noise. Can't be sacrificing food now because you can't use scissors.
Yeah, but they also had a farm, so I feel like why risk it? Because they farmed their own crops, they caught their own fish from the river. Like, I feel like the only thing they probably didn't do before was catch their own fish in the river.
I would risk it for Doritos.
And that's why he wouldn't last very long.
If anyone
folks.
wants to sponsor me, I'll risk it for your chip. Okay.
Your chip. He specifically mentioned Doritos, and now he is downgrading to any chip. How about a plain potato chip?
No.
Exactly. He's not willing.
We never get the names of any of the characters in this movie because they only talk to each other, and I guess they don't sign each other's names. They all talk in sign language, but they all had names that I'm going to try and use here, but I'm probably going to have to keep double checking them because I don't know their names from the movie. So John Krasinski, he's the father. He's Lee. Emily Blunt is Evelyn. Their oldest daughter is Reagan. Their oldest son is Marcus, and their youngest son is Bo. So they're at this pharmacy because Marcus is sick for some reason. They don't really go into it. Doesn't seem like it's that bad. They just need something for him. During their time here, Bo picks up a rocket ship, and it's like a toy rocket ship, has batteries in it, lights, it would make noise. And Bo seems to have like a little obsession with rocket ships. He says to Reagan, he draws a rocket on the ground. He says to her, he signs to her, that's how we'll get away. Like he has a plan, like this is how we're going to escape this life we live. I imagine it's been hard. You tell your kids that are all already, like they've been living in a normal world, and you tell them like, no more talking.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like foreshadowing, I think, that he says, like, that's how we'll get away with the rockets for a little later on, which I'll talk about. I just wanted to mention that. But while they are at this pharmacy and the kid picks up the rocket, Lee takes it away from him very carefully, takes out the batteries and sets it down as like, it's too loud, you can't have it. Which, why not just give him the rocket with all the batteries? Like,
yeah, I think maybe the buttons made noise. I'm not sure. I actually thought the same thing. I do think it's important to mention, and you probably have some trivia on this later on, but their daughter, Reagan, the reason the entire family can sign is because she is deaf. They didn't just learn sign language in 82 days. They already knew how to do it, which I just think was
That is lucky,
helpful. Yeah, it was just helpful for the situation.
Because how many people out there tried to survive after figuring it out and, like, just had to mime everything because they didn't know. Anyway, they leave this grocery store. They're heading home. You can see that they've poured sand along their path. They already walk barefoot, but they've also poured sand along their path to get back to their home so that they're making less noise as they're moving. Just all these little subtle things that you see throughout the movie that they do to stay quiet. But before they leave, Reagan feels bad for Bo, and she hands him the rocket back without the batteries. But then she turns her back, as does the rest of the family, and they walk out, and Bo reaches up and grabs the batteries. So as they're about to cross this bridge to get home, Bo, being a child, puts the batteries back into the rocket, and it starts going off. And it's like such a good scene, I think, right there in the beginning to do, because you don't really, I mean, you know, trailers and whatnot, but you're not sure yet what exactly is the problem, why they're being so quiet, why there's nobody around. And it cuts to Reagan's point of view, and whenever it's her point of view, there's no noise because she actually is deaf. And, you know, everyone's quiet, but still, you can normally hear like shuffling or just small noises, but not when it's her point of view. And she is behind the rest of her family besides Bo, and so everything goes silent when it switches to her, and she just sees her family turn around with like looks of absolute horror on their face. And I think that that was such a cool way to do it. Plus, you see just barely in the background Bo like playing with the rocket. And so Lee sets down his other son and goes sprinting to try and get Bo. And you can see that he's making like eye contact with one of the creatures that's running side by side with him in the forest to get Bo. And he just misses him. It's like super depressing.
Yeah, I wrote that the kid was a dumbass in my notes.
Okay.
I'm not a mom, so I don't know.
Go ahead, defend this child death in the movie.
I'm not defending the child death at all. I think that it's awful. I just feel like if the sister gave him the spaceship, he should have been fine with that. The dad told him it was too loud, and then he's like, I'll take them batteries too, though, homie. He could have just had the spaceship and survived, but he's like, nah, batteries, bitch.
I think it's just kids, you know.
Yeah.
One, they probably haven't seen the creatures, like.
That's true. He was just being a kid, and it's unfortunate he got torn apart to shreds because of it. But I thought that the transition from the kid dying and being whisked away to the title screen, and it showed like sand reveal the title of the movie, A Quiet Place, was like the sand from his, like, you know, I thought that was cool.
Yeah, that is good. So we progress after that. That was day 82 after the initial invasion to day 472. So it's been a while since his death. And you see their life at the farm where they live. Just, again, the things they do every day to stay quiet. I mean, some of it comes up throughout the rest of the movie, but I'm not going to mention it every second. Like, they wash dishes or laundry just by hand. They don't use the washing machine. They eat off of, like, spinach leaves or something. I don't know. You know, some kind of, like, lettuce thing. They don't use silverware. They eat with their hands.
They eat quiet foods, soft foods.
Yeah, that too. They, when they're cooking, you see that she has like a smoker in the ground. Like, they don't have like ovens, microwaves, nothing like that. Just stuff like that you see the way that they live to stay quiet. And they obviously have it pretty planned out, even just 472 days in. I mean, you know, I know that's a while, but still, like, they've got it going, and they think that everything's going to be okay, to the point where it's revealed that Evelyn is also pregnant with another child. You know, we don't know exactly the circumstances of that, but they feel pretty confident that they're going to be able to deal with that, which is kind of crazy.
I actually don't think, I didn't get that vibe. I don't think that the dad, Lee, I don't think Lee was confident. No. Because first off, we can go back. I did want to say that when it becomes nighttime, Lee goes to the top of this grain elevator and lights a fire. And then you can see fires popping up all throughout the mountains where they live. And I thought that was a cool way of signaling like who's alive versus who's not. But after that, he goes down and he's working in that room. And Evelyn comes in there. And it's like after dinner and everything too. And puts the headphone in. They're listening to music and they're dancing. And I felt like in that moment, he looked absolutely terrified that she's going to die or the entire family is going to die when the babies come because he knows that babies cry. And I think that's why he's so anal about trying to like figure out how to beat them and get it to where his daughter can hear, because he knows like they need all hands on deck to keep the baby quiet. Yes. And so that's the vibe I got.
I mean, all that makes sense. I guess where I was thinking they're confident is that he went ahead and put his unprotected dick into his wife.
I mean,
they could have figured it out.
I'm just maybe so, but what if it was an accident? We don't know. It's not our business.
I'd be a little more careful, or I would accept death. Anyway, like you said, Lee spends time in a little shop area working on a hearing aid for Regan. Doesn't seem like that was his job or anything. He has books there where he's like trying to learn how to do this stuff, and he hasn't been successful so far. You can see he's got a pile of like hearing aids that he's been working on to give to Regan, and he also has kind of a strained relationship with her. She feels guilty about Bo, and she also seems to believe that Lee blames her for Bo. She has a better relationship with her mother, and that strain eventually comes up where they have an argument when she tries to go down into his shop area, and he stops her and is like, you can't go down there. And she's like, I'm not a kid, I can be quiet. And he tells her just stop and tries to give her a new hearing aid. She doesn't want it. She's like, it's not going to work. It never works. I mean, you know, we've been talking about how she's the only one that's actually deaf from the family. Everyone just has to be quiet. But the actress that plays her, Millicent Simmons, she's been deaf since she was an infant due to a medication overdose. And this was actually only the second film that she starred in, with a movie called Wonderstruck being her first in 2017, just a year before this. Well, on top of that, this movie, they initially intended to leave the sign language unsubtitled, believing that the audience would understand the subtext of what was going on. The first trailer for the movie actually doesn't do any subtitles for the sign language. However, while they were editing this argument that I'm talking about, they decided that they needed to have subtitles, like it was too much.
I think it's better with subtitles. It gives feeling and context behind what's happening.
Yeah.
A little bit, just because you can see like where they don't. The vibe I get is, I mean, yes, the dad is hard on her, but I think it's just because he's so afraid because she won't hear something and won't be able to get away in time. I truly think it's all for protection.
Yeah, she can't even hear if she makes a noise.
Yeah,
you know?
So I think that's why he's like, no, you can't come. Especially because, I mean, next Lee and Marcus go fishing for their food, and she wants to go, but he says no. And, you know, at first, the first watch through, I was like, man, he's kind of making it seem like that's woman's work. But the more you think about it, she can't hear if she makes noise. She can't do anything. It's truly a danger to her.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I think that, you know, it comes up, but he could have done a better job of communicating those thoughts with her, and,
right.
You know, that he doesn't blame her, but he was hurt. You know, when he goes up, like you mentioned earlier, and lights that fire on that silo, he has a little box up there with stuff from Bo and pictures of Bo, and you see him just like staring at it. And I can imagine how hard that is. He feels like he failed in that area.
Yeah.
But they do decide to go fishing. They have fishing traps already set up, so they have to collect that. That seems to be what they mostly eat for protein. You know, they don't have livestock because you can't deal with that. There's no noise. Like, you know, you can't have cows mooing or anything like that. So they just get fish. And Marcus goes with Lee, but Marcus doesn't want to go, and he's, you know, panicking about it. He's super worried that something's going to happen. When they get out there, they have a nice moment where he explains to him that if there's a louder noise nearby, then they're safe. And so when they're by the water, they can kind of whisper still and talk. Then he shows them the waterfall that leads to that river, and they're able to yell there. And they have a conversation where Marcus is like, why won't you let, you know, Regan come, and you should tell her that you love her if you don't blame her, that kind of thing. And
because she blames herself.
Yes. Meanwhile, back at home, Regan's upset, and she goes to Bo's grave, which is just right there where he died by that bridge. They just have...
It's pretty far from the house, though.
Yeah, she takes a pretty long walk over there, and...
I think it's sad. It shows Evelyn, like, preparing for the new baby. She's trying to do laundry. She's doing all this stuff, and then she's sitting in their dead son's room, being, like, mourning his death.
Yeah, I did want to say, when she's preparing the laundry, it sets up something for later, but she is dragging a bag of laundry up the stairs, and it gets caught on a nail, and she's, like, trying to pull it and just keeps pulling, and then, you know, like, it snaps, and she falls and she just gets up and goes. Like, you should check what it got caught on.
Yeah.
I feel that was your own fault.
Yeah.
But
for sure.
Anyway, she ends up going into labor a little premature. There was a scene where she's looking at a calendar. She's been marking her
blood pressure.
Yeah, her blood pressure, and it's like 2 weeks away. And so she goes into labor and she starts heading downstairs. They have like a setup where they have a box that the baby can go in with some oxygen and a mattress that pulls over this hole to try and like keep it as quiet as possible. And so she goes heading back down these stairs and just steps right onto a nail that's sticking up. And it's not a little nail, it's huge. And so she lets out a scream and drops this picture frame that she was holding, and that shatters, plus her scream. And pretty immediately, one of the creatures is in there. It's not said in this movie, and I only saw it because of the research that I did, so I don't know if it comes up in the second movie. I haven't seen the second movie, but the creatures are called Death Angels, and I am only bringing it up now because I am going to talk about that a little later, too. The Death Angels are in the house. She's going into labor. She flicks this switch that turns all the lights on their farm red, and I think that's like an alert to let, I guess, Lee know, because Lee's on his way back and sees the lights, and so he's in a panic. And Lee and Marcus are trying to help her because they know she's going to be screaming from, you know.
Maybe.
Yeah. And this is also kind of the first time you're seeing an up-close look at the creatures wandering around. And they're weird. Their faces like got several segments to it that open up, and you can see they have like an ear.
They have no eyes.
Yeah, they're blind, which that comes up too. Like in his office or whatever, he has like whiteboards where he's like, what is their weakness? Blind, armor, like everything that he can figure out about them. And which he also has newspaper clippings that say things like about like, you know, noise is what does it, like whenever the world was falling apart. And it made me wonder like who was still running these loud ass printing presses to get those newspapers going.
I know. I thought the same thing. I think there's a few little holes in the movie like that, but it is what it is. Maybe it took time for them to spread. Like I was saying, like if everything started in New York, they were probably able to prepare and like have a better chance of survival because they were already living on a farm. They live in the mountains. It's a secluded area. XYZ. I do think it's we need to mention that on their way back after seeing the red lights, there's a man standing in the forest and he's just looking, and Lee and Marcus run across him, and his dead wife is laying in the ditch, and they're just staring at each other, and Lee has this look of terror and tries to move Marcus away and is trying to tell the old man, like, don't scream, like, let us get away. And the old man gives 0 Fs and screams. And so
you think he could have let him get away, right?
Lee grabs Marcus and takes off in a dead sprint because one of the creatures comes and kills the guy. But yeah, that's what I thought. That guy was super shitty for that.
What a dick.
Yeah, you could have just let them get away, given them 30 minutes, and then done your scream. Like, you were going to die anyway. You're fine.
It was kind of sad. But I also, you should have at least, like, why are you hurting other people?
I know.
So once he gets back and he wants to try and save them, he tells Marcus, you need to go set off these fireworks that they have there. And that's kind of the part I was saying about the rocket in the beginning, where they're saying that's how we'll get away, because they have these fireworks set up around their farm. And I don't know if they had them set up as a plan, or if it's because if you look at the timeline, the invasion started sometime around the 4th of July, or leading up to the 4th of July. So maybe it was just normal. I don't know. But Marcus is kind of afraid, but he goes to do it to help Evelyn, and they set it off right at the same time as she begins screaming from giving birth.
I think that she hears the fireworks and is like, oh, okay, I can let out a scream now.
Yeah.
Because you can be loud. And so she screams as she's giving birth. It pans to the daughter who's laying by the grave, who sees the fireworks in the sky, looks over, sees the red lights, and starts sprinting back to the house.
Yeah. And that's the only way she would have known, I guess, is seeing all that, because she wouldn't have been able to hear anything.
But hence, a baby was born, and she's hiding in the shower. And Lee goes up, thinks that they're dead because there's blood all in the bathtub, is very upset, and then Evelyn's bloody hand, touches, and he gets the baby and Evelyn to safety in the soundproof room, and then they start talking.
Yeah, and he goes to find the other 2 kids because they're obviously not with him. And when he does find them, they were on top of a corn silo and they fell in. You know, they're able to get out, but it's like kind of a stressful moment because they're sinking, and one of the creatures also gets in there. But this is where we find out that the creatures have some kind of weakness to like sonic frequencies, because of her hearing aid that doesn't work is like going off, and it makes the creature freak out and break out of the corn silo, and so they're able to get out that way
That's
as well.
That's the only reason they were able to get out.
Yeah, they would have been dead. Speaking of those creatures as well, like I said, that you're able to see them up close now. I read that the first test screening of the film, audience members were laughing in the scenes with the creature because they hadn't finished the CGI in the movie yet, and a lot of the scenes had John Krasinski in motion capture suits playing the creature. And so I can't imagine they were able to take it seriously. You just see him like pretending. Yeah. Anyway, they get into a truck that's near the corn silo to kind of roll down the hill in it, but one of the creatures is there and Lee meets up with them. I thought them being in the truck was kind of cool because it reminded me of like Jurassic Park, like the first one with the T-Rex, because the creature's like knocking the truck around trying to get to them. Anyway, I did want to say, like, I don't understand why the creature heard them, because before they get in the truck and they all meet up, they're being very quiet and just walking, and then Lee like slowly picks up like a shovel and that thing just smacks him.
Yeah, that part didn't make sense. I don't know if it was left over from the house or what, because Evelyn had to leave the soundproof room because it was flooding, and the creature was in the flooded basement with her. And she was able to get out with the baby. And then I guess that was the same creature. I just
don't know why I heard them at all, because they were just as quiet as the rest of the movie.
I just think that they needed to kill Lee, to be quite honest, because the conversation between Evelyn and Lee down there when they're alone in the soundproof room with the baby, she was crying about how she could have saved Bo if she had been, she's like, I was weak, but my hands were empty. I could have been carrying him.
Yeah.
And she's like, you save them no matter what. And when she has the baby, she goes to the room that was Lee's room with trying to find their weaknesses, the batteries, XYZ, with all of the cameras of the farm, and she sees what happens.
Yeah, and so Lee, since he already got slashed by one of the creatures and the kids are in the truck, he needs them to escape. It's a pretty emotional moment. He signs to them, specifically kind of to Reagan, I love you, I've always loved you. And then he screams. You mentioned it during the movie that you thought the scream was funny.
It was pretty funny. I thought it was a little funny.
I do think John Krasinski didn't have the best scream. That's not his fault, I guess. I said it too. I would have muted the scene.
Yeah.
Had it from her point of view and just had it mute and like slowed down. I also think...
I think it would have been more impactful that way.
Yeah. I mean, they were going to get away, but I also think that the way that he stood there and screamed and the creature came at him, he just stood, like, try and duck, do something.
Yeah, I think that he thought that after he tried to fight it with the axe, what I was going to ask you is, do you think he picked the right tool? There was a whole bucket of tools there. Personally, I would have gone pitchfork, but...
Yeah, I think that he knew that I think he was going for weight because he knew that there was no killing it because he wrote down armor. Yeah. So nothing they had can probably penetrate that.
Other than that shotgun.
But
the mouth was open and the armor was like off. Anyways, the kids get away in the truck. They run inside. They find the mom in that room. Reagan is looking around the room like, man, my dad really worked really hard for me.
Yeah, she sees all the stuff that she wasn't allowed to see before, all the hearing aids and stuff.
And a creature, again, they were not making noise.
Yeah, it wanders down there.
It wanders down there
and she, with the frequency thing, she takes her hearing aid off and like shoves it into this ham radio that Lee is shown using, trying to contact the outside world. And it creates like a big frequency noise and it really hurts the creature. You think it kills it, but it doesn't. It gets back up. But now its face is kind of like open. Like it has all this armor on its face that opens up and then you can see like a fleshy underneath. And when its face is open, Evelyn shoots it. And then you see on the cameras 2 more coming, which he wrote down somewhere that there's 3 in the area. So they know that there's still 2. And then the movie ends there. I guess they live because there's a part 2.
She pumps the shotgun and is like, I'm ready.
Yeah.
And I said, sure, that was cool, but like, she gonna need more ammo. Yeah. And the ammo was not in that room. He was loading the gun on the bed under a blanket.
Maybe don't be too confident. Maybe close that door and shut up.
For sure. I still really liked the movie. I'm sitting here talking shit, but it was actually really good.
Yeah, I mean, I rated it a 5 out of 5.
I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 just for like the few little cheesy things but it doesn't mean the movie wasn't great.
My last piece of trivia that I thought for a movie that was this good, in my opinion, is it was shot in just 36 days, and I thought that was pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty good though, because the cast is so limited.
Yeah.
And then it was really a couple of sets, probably maybe one big set.
Yeah.
But it, limiting stuff like that Same outfits.
Yeah,
Like,
it's probably pretty cheap too.
it was probably a cheaper movie to film, but yeah, that's pretty cool. Not a lot of dialogue to mess up, I guess.
There's only 25 lines of dialogue.
Yeah.
Whole movie. So that too. Not a lot of reshoots probably. Okay, so for the game, I have a list of people that I'm going to ask you whether or not they would survive in the universe of A Quiet Place.
Okay.
So number 1, Jim Halpert.
No.
I don't think so. He's got to talk. He's too
Yeah.
fucking noisy. He's always got to be making jokes. He'd die.
Yeah, exactly. Immediately, yes.
Okay, the Avengers.
Like, which ones?
Hulk, Iron Man, Thor, Black Widow, Hawkeye.
Unfortunately, I don't think Hawkeye would. I think he'd die saving his family or something. I think that Captain America wouldn't. I think the thing is that they would try and fight, and not all of them could survive the fight. Like, Iron Man probably could, because he also has armor, and those things seem to be on the ground. They don't seem to be able to fly.
Okay.
Hulk might take a little bit more to kill. I would say some of them.
I think most of them would survive. Hawkeye himself is deaf, so he can communicate with people that can sign.
Thor would survive.
Yeah, these things seem the equivalent of the Outriders from, Thanos' army.
I know. I don't know. Yeah.
Black Widow and Hawkeye are spies.
I know. That's what I was thinking. Black Widow would just hide.
The Scout Regiment from Attack on Titan.
Not all of them. Only some of them would survive.
I think they're
Levi
fucking...
and Mikasa, and that is it.
I think the ODM gear's too noisy.
Yeah, but I think that they'd be fighting them. I think they'd be quiet, and then they'd fight them. But the only people that could really just be quiet are Levi and Mikasa.
Okay.
They're the only the Ackermans survive.
Okay.
I guess if you're including like Rhina, Bertolt, like the people who
that are
were
Titans,
that are actual Titans. So this is before Eren goes rogue.
Let's not get too.
The 9 founding, well, not even all 9 of them, but the
God.
Titans would survive, and the Ackermans, and that's it.
Spoilers for Attack on Titan.
It's not spoilers.
What about Michael Myers?
No,
He's always quiet.
but he murders people who scream.
You think he'd look for people screaming? He'd probably just fall in with them then.
He doesn't talk, but he walks and then murders people, and then the people who he murders screams, and then the creature would come and get him.
I think he'd be fine.
No.
I think he wouldn't be able to even find anyone.
My reasoning is so sound.
Okay.
Don't you come at me.
Nick Cage's character in Willy's
Absolutely
Wonderland.
survival. Survive.
But he likes to play pinball, and that's loud.
No, he only played pinball because that was the game that was available.
What about his energy drinks? He'd pop one and be killed.
He would already have a soundproof room built where that's the only place he'd pop them and then set his timer, like his silent timer, for an hour, and then go out and do whatever, and then go back to his soundproof and take his little break.
This is based off a character that speaks no lines. You're so sure he's gonna...
Yes.
Okay, well, that's it for my game. So the sequel, obviously, there's A Quiet Place Part 2, and then coming out this week is A Quiet Place Day 1, but we are just writing this direct sequel to this movie. I haven't seen... Well, neither of us have seen either one of the sequels. So, after you.
I haven't seen, I do want to preface this, I haven't seen the sequel. I kind of read a little bit about A Quiet Place Part 2. I didn't want to make mine exactly like it, but I wanted to know a few things that happened because I wanted to make my movie take place after that.
Yeah.
Not as a sequel to that. Not as a kind of, I guess. I don't really, like I said, I haven't seen it, so I don't know if what I even read is correct. It's called A Quiet Place. I put year X here because I didn't know how many years after. It's year 10. I'm going to make it 10 years after Day 0. So 10 years have passed since Day 0, and Reagan was able to get, I thought that, it said in, like, A Quiet Place Part 2, I'm going to say that she was able to signal, like, the world somehow that the noise was bothersome to them.
Okay.
I think that's what Part 2 does. Like I said, I'm not for sure, but I'm just going to go with that's what happens. That the sound affects the creatures, and she and her family, which of Evelyn, Marcus, and then the new baby, I don't know what the baby's name is, have been able to live a more peaceful and quiet life in a community of people that they had found. But they're kind of tucked away in the woods again, desolate life. However, there's a cult that worships the creatures who want to kill the source of the creature's demise that has begun since she got the signal out, so they want to kill Reagan. They're hunting the family, and they do eventually find where they're living in the community. To lure the family into helping them, they pretend to be lost and have to be constantly running from the creatures, causing not only the Abbott family, but everyone else in the community to take them in. Over time, they study Reagan, realize she's deaf, but also very smart, just like her father, and are preparing a secret mission to have her be a human sacrifice as a message to the people that the creatures need to survive. They're the superior, and they should all not be quiet and just live life, and if they die, they die. As Reagan has captured the oldest brother, I didn't know his name at the time, but his name's Marcus, is trying to save her by pretending to want to be a part of the cult, and he wants to be the one to kill her. The mom is distraught by this, having to choose between Marcus and Reagan of who to save. Just as she is about to kill her son as the sacrifice ceremony for Reagan, she stops, decides not to, and was like, my son wouldn't do that. Marcus frees Reagan, and they are able to murder the people of the cult with the helps of the others in the community. Yeah, they're all murderers, sorry. However, all of this noise has alerted the creatures and that they are coming. A member of the community, or a few members of the community, sacrifice themselves to save Reagan, as she does get hurt in the fight and she can't walk. She has to be carried. I think that's a throwback to the beginning of the first one. And the community decides they're going to move to a more secure location after this and have to rebuild, but they're going to stay a community.
Pretty wild.
Pretty wild. It's like Walking Dead meets A Quiet Place.
Way to go, Marcus. Okay. Well, mine is called The Quiet Place.
Oh.
The film opens up with a title card, 50 years ago.
Oh, this is basically a script. It's so long. Buckle in.
The film opens up with the title card 50 years ago, showing a group silently and slowly passing supplies down a line, building something with glimpses of blueprints. We see a couple look at one another as one writes down on a sticky notepad, "This will work." A new title card is then shown, day 18,265. We follow a young couple in their teenage years surviving alone. Their names are not revealed as they only communicate in sign language, but we will refer to them as Isabella and Lucas. These two were born into this world and managed to stay alive. However, you can see how this world has weighed on them, and surviving gets harder every day. The couple seem to have had their spirits broken, but they push on with a goal that is barely revealed through a hand-drawn map that they're following. On their journey, we see how the world has continued to degrade, as fewer and fewer seem to be left alive, and some of those left alive have become violent and dangerous. When Isabella and Lucas finally reach their destination, we find that this community they've been searching for is living safely in a massive shelter built to mimic an anechoic chamber, meaning the noises inside are much less likely to be heard by the Death Angels. They believe this to be a sanctuary at long last. However, the people inside seem to be uneasy, as there is a clear division in goals among the group. While they are safer, the community speaks mostly in whispers. As we see through the years, humans have begun losing their ability to speak in complete sentences, as most had not spoken for years, especially those born into the invasion. Through these whispers, we learn that while some of the group feels safe in their sanctuary, many are sick of the thought of living and dying stuck within these walls and never able to leave. Those wanting to leave have been working on building improvised sonic weapons to fight the Death Angels and set this world free. Those comfortable staying fear that these sonic weapons could hurt them too, or just bring the creatures in overwhelming force. This divide also puts Isabel and Lucas at odds, as they each side with a different group. All of this comes to a head when we see that Isabel and Lucas were followed by a crazed group of survivors who decide to attack the sanctuary for their food. First attacking silently in the night, but as bodies begin to be found, the group begins to question who they can trust, not realizing they've been infiltrated by these attackers. The arguing gets louder and louder until one of the attackers panics about the noise, and they start shooting to quickly kill the survivors in Sanctuary. The Death Angels begin descending on the shelter and tearing it to pieces from the outside, causing the anechoic properties to be useless. With nothing left to lose, we see Lucas and Isabella make their way to the sonic weapons and find they have speakers set up all around the shelter ready to set off a sonic frequency to kill the Death Angels. The activation button has an old sticky note on it reading, "This will work." Isabella hits the button and the audio goes silent as we see human and Death Angel alike suffering from the noise. Isabella and Lucas hold hands and pass out. Later we see Isabella wake up to find Lucas has died beside her, and in her pain she lets out a cry, believing the Death Angels will still come for her, but she hears nothing as the movie ends and pans over several bodies of humans and Death Angels. So we don't know. Did it kill all the Death Angels?
No one will ever know. It was good though. I liked it. I think it's funny how I was originally going to make my sequel like 50 years in the future, and then I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to use the same like characters. I feel like maybe Reagan had more of a story to tell.
Definitely.
Yada, yada, yada. But we both went like the creepy cult, like evil side, and I think for me, it was like important to acknowledge that, you're better, like words are better spoken when you write stuff like that than I feel like I am. But it's important to note that people in a world like this are going to turn. Like, not everyone is going to be nice and helpful. There will be evil in the world, and that's what I wanted to highlight. And I thought it was funny because you also highlighted that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like I've talked about with The Walking Dead, where people will complain like, "Oh, there's not enough zombies," and it's like it's not a show about zombies. It's about a show about how people would be in this situation.
Right.
People aren't all gonna band together.
Some people will be Negan and the Governor, and some people will be Rick
before and after.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I just think that it was interesting that we both went that way, but sure.
All right, well, thank you so much for listening. We do so appreciate it. If you want to talk movies with us, you can find us on TikTok, Instagram, Letterboxd, Threads, and Twitter. We are NansPod everywhere. If you'd like to vote on whose sequel idea was the best, come by our YouTube channel for the polls, or let us know your idea across our socials with a comment, tweet, or you can reach us at needlesssequel@gmail.com. Links, as always, will be wherever you are listening. And if you wouldn't mind, share a show with someone, leave us a review, and come back for more. We'd love to have you and hear what we can do to improve. Next week, we're going to be watching Despicable Me. I love that movie. And it's because there's a new one coming out.
Oh, Despicable Me is a good movie. I watched it for the first time as an adult, and I enjoyed it.
It gets a lot of bad rep because of Facebook moms with their Minion memes.
Yeah, but
it's a good movie.
Minions aren't the good part of the movie.
I disagree. I mean, they're not the best part.
I guess we'll have this discussion next week, won't we?
You're right. All right, take care of yourselves. We'll see you next week. And remember, I've always loved you.
And
Nope.